All right, welcome back to the FARA interview series where we are taking you behind the scenes at the International Ataxia Research Conference. We're here, me and Randy are here this morning with Rob Wilson and Grazia Cotticelli. Got it. And we are going to talk about your lab and what it means for FA research. And so first of all, let's introduce yourselves a little bit and tell us a little bit about your lab.
Okay. I'm Rob Wilson, and I am a physician scientist, meaning that I'm interested both in how nature works, which is basic science, but also translating things into therapeutics. And that's kind of the focus of our lab right now.
No, I joined Rob's lab almost 10 years ago, so I've been working on Friedreich Ataxia for 10 years now, I believe.
Ferroptosis is hard, and like I said at the beginning, Grazia and I are still struggling with the literature because it's an evolving field.
Yeah.
And lipid biology is really very, right now it's more coming to light, but not a lot of people study them. Mm-hmm. So it's really obscure. It was an obscure chapter in the biology book, right? And now it's exploding.
Grazia, later this morning, you're going to lecture to the International Ataxia Research Conference about a novel class of ferroptosis inhibitors as a potential treatment, a potential therapy for Friedreich ataxia. Help us, if you would, both understand, first off, what is ferroptosis? And I think, as I've teased before, why should we be excited about it?
It's a tough one, because ferroptosis is a concept that even a lot of very advanced scientists are still grappling with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's touching a class of molecules that is not studied as much as other things, which are the lipids, which are major constituents of our body because they make up our cell membranes and internal membranes. And ferroptosis affects the stability of these membranes, basically. It's a process that tends to destroy the membrane's integrity, and therefore is dangerous. And we are trying to figure it out how the loss of frataxin correlates with ferroptosis, and we found some initial evidence that the Friedreich ataxia cells are more sensitive to this type of damage, and we are trying to see if we can revert it.
Let's break this down for a second. Lipids are fats.
Yes.
Some of us have more lipids than others, perhaps?
Well, there are different types of lipids.
Okay, different type of lipids.
Different type of lipids. And we all know we need them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do lipids do in cells?
So most of the people at this moment believe that they are structural components. So they make up membranes which divide the internal part of the cells from the outside. And they didn't have any functional activity, but more and more is discovered, and it's very, very complicated because the variety of lipids that is out there is stunning. It's very hard to deal with. So we are figuring out what is more important and what does what.
So many people who may be watching this have seen pictures of cells. Mm-hmm. Well, that circle.
And I think we have one that we can pull up.
Yeah, that circle of a cell, that's a lipid membrane that defines where the cell is. And some people have seen pictures of mitochondria. Mm-hmm. Well, mitochondria, those little lines that you see that define where a mitochondria is, those are lipid membranes. And the internal structures in mitochondria are also made of lipid membranes, and that's where energy gets produced, and that's where the iron-sulfur cluster defect in Friedreich's plays out. But that those proteins that make energy sit in a lipid membrane, and if that lipid membrane is damaged, it may affect how well those proteins work.
And is your research either coming to the conclusion or directed to the proposition that Friedreich cells are more prone to lipid peroxidation than non-Friedreich cells?
Well, that's what Grazia found. So she tested this out. She found that Friedreich cells were much more sensitive to inducers of ferroptosis than normal cells, and that ferroptosis inhibitors helped the cells in ways that suggest that ferroptosis might well contribute to the progression of Friedreich ataxia.
Chicken and the egg question. Are people with Friedreich more prone to ferroptosis, or does ferroptosis in some fashion contribute to the frataxin deficiency?
I think more the first than the second.
Okay. As we walk through this process of getting these novel approaches, these novel therapeutic approaches out of the lab and into the pharmacy, how is it that a ferroptosis inhibitor will help people with Friedreich's?
So, if ferroptosis is important insofar that it damages cells and helps the progression of the disease, then having an inhibitor of ferroptosis should help reverting this type of damage.
So stopping the process
yes,
will
stopping
help the
the
cell.
cells. Yes.
The cell will help the body.
Right.
Right. Now,
How might this translate into a therapy for people with FA? I mean, in a perfect world, right? And everything goes right. What might this look like, and how might these compounds that you guys are looking at translate into a treatment for people with FA?
it's a great question. The days of ferroptosis inhibitors are early yet. The ones we've tested in the lab, I'm not sure they're ready for prime time. But Grazia discovered one that is based on a natural molecule, and I think it has a chance to go a lot faster. But the community is well aware that despite our urgency to try and move things forward as quickly as possible, there's a whole series of hurdles you have to go through to develop drugs. And so I think much depends on which of these ferroptosis inhibitors look like they're non-toxic in animal models and things like that. It's a more typical drug development pathway, but Grazia's discovery of these derivatives of a natural molecule, I think, may allow us to move more quickly.
Rob, I understand it that Kyle convinced you to ride a bike across Europe for like 8 or 9 days.
Yes.
At some point. Is that true? And have you recovered?
Well, so it was fall of 2016, and I was participating in Ride Ataxia Philadelphia, which I do every year with Kyle and a lot of other people. And including my lab comes out. And at the end of the ride, Kyle said, this was I think in October, and Kyle said, "Oh, we're doing this ride in France next summer, and you're coming." And I said, "Okay." And for those of you who have seen the Ataxian, there's a famous scene with Bob O'Neill saying, "I had no idea what I was getting myself into," which I think is the case. And I said, "So what are we talking about?" And he goes, "Oh, we're riding from Strasbourg to Lyon." Now I happen to know the geography of France. To put it in perspective, in 8 days we biked 455 miles, and it was first week of July. We were in a heat wave. It was 98 degrees in the afternoon.
I've never been hotter than I was on that ride.
The kind of days where you don't even want to walk outside, let alone ride 60 miles and then ride 70 miles and then ride 80 miles in successive days. So, you get up in the morning and your legs, you just can barely straighten out your legs, and you have to get on the bike and ride, 50, 60, 70 miles. So, but it was, the feeling of accomplishment is often proportional to how difficult something is. So there was that amazing camaraderie, this group of riders who pushed through the pain and rode all the way to the end. And, it was mind-bogglingly fun and interesting and fulfilling.
So, Rob, you've been in this since the beginning. With all the momentum that we feel lately, can you maybe talk a little bit about that? And I guess also my question has to do with the patient community, because I know you're very passionate about the connections you have with the community.
I got into this to sort of translate it into therapies for patients. And, Ron Bartek called me up and said, "I need a scientific director." And I was already, studying Friedreich's, and I thought, okay, I'm not going to solve this in my lab. Okay, this is going to take the larger community. And so it was a very good fit. And then, with Ron's leadership in the building of the community and meeting the patients, it became more than just an emotional spur, although that's very important to me. It also became important because the patients kept volunteering for our early studies of developing better ataxia scales, which sounds boring, but you got to have them if you want to get a drug over the finish line. Volunteering for our natural history studies, getting on a registry, and that's why drug companies, their orphan drug divisions, are looking around. What should we work on? Oh, here's the Friedreich's ataxia research lines. They set up the registry. They have the natural history data. Let's work on that. It's the community working together has been actually so totally crucial to getting to the point where we are now, which is where we have so many shots on goal that I've never been more optimistic. Drug development is extremely difficult. Most drugs fail, But when you have so many shots on goal, or a diversified portfolio, depending on what metaphor you want, eggs in many baskets, you know, your chances of success go way up. And you know, we're really close now, and so I'm more excited than ever. You know, I'm not jaded at all. I'm like, we're going to get this thing over the finish line, which is very exciting to me. But you know, having gotten to be friends and having close relationships with many in the community, it's also, you know, very gratifying emotionally for me, because I can do something for them in some small way.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you both for everything you do for our community.
Thank you.
All right, that was a great interview. Dr. Rob Wilson, Dr. Grazia Cotticelli, thank you very much for all of your help. Keep on tuning in. These interviews will keep on coming as long as you guys tolerate Kyle and I doing them. Check out the FARA YouTube channel.
Why is that funny?
FARA Facebook page. Check out FARA on Twitter and LinkedIn. Our next interview will be with Dr. David Corey and Dr. Merrick Naparella about ASOs and why you should be excited about those.
Yep.
See you next time.
You should be. Editing. That's why that there's an Academy Award for Best Editor.
See? Hear that, FA community?